I'm Olivia Bennett, 28, and I was 5 months pregnant when my world shattered. My husband Marcus died in a car accident on a Tuesday morning, and by Thursday, I was back at work because my company's HR director told me grief leave isn't company policy. Sitting at my desk, barely able to breathe through my tears, I realized they saw me as expendable, a pregnant woman they could push around. But what they didn't know was that I'd spent 3 years quietly building something they couldn't touch, and their cruelty was about to cost them everything. The wedding photo on my desk stared back at me, Marcus's smile frozen in happier times. And I made a promise to both him and our unborn child that this wouldn't be the end of our story. Before we jump back in, tell me where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. If you've ever felt invisible in your own workplace, like this video, this story is about finding your voice when they try to silence your pain. Marcus and I met at a tech conference 3 years ago. I was presenting my research on machine learning algorithms, and he was in the audience, asking the most insightful questions afterward. "You're going to change the world," he told me over coffee that first day, and I believed him because he believed in me so completely. We married 18 months later in a small ceremony surrounded by family and friends. Marcus worked as a financial analyst, steady and reliable, while I threw myself into my role as a software developer at Meridian Tech. We bought a modest house in the suburbs, painted the spare room yellow for our future baby, and dreamed of the life we'd build together. When I found out I was pregnant, Marcus cried happy tears. He assured me through his own emotion. "Our little miracle," he whispered, placing his hand on my still flat stomach. We spent evenings planning, choosing names, imagining our child's future. Marcus insisted on reading pregnancy books, downloading apps to track the baby's development, and talking to my belly every night. "Can't wait to meet our little one," he texted me that Tuesday morning, just hours before the accident. I was in a meeting when my phone buzzed with his message. I smiled, typing back a heart emoji, completely unaware that those would be the last words we'd ever exchange. The call came at 2:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because I was staring at my computer screen, debugging code, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Mrs. Bennett? This is Officer Rodriguez with the city police. I'm calling about your husband, Marcus Bennett." The world stopped. Everything after that became a blur of hospital corridors, paperwork, and phone calls. Marcus had been driving to a client meeting when a drunk driver ran a red light. The impact was instantaneous. He didn't suffer, they told me, as if that somehow made it better. I stood in the hospital morgue, looking at the man who had promised to love me forever, who would never meet our child, who would never again text me about his excitement for our future. The pregnancy book sat unopened on his nightstand. The yellow nursery waited, empty and silent. The funeral was a haze of condolences and casseroles. People said things like, "He's in a better place and everything happens for a reason." But their words felt hollow. Marcus wasn't in a better place. He was supposed to be here, with me, preparing for our baby's arrival by Sunday. The house felt impossibly quiet. I sat in our bedroom, holding his pillow, breathing in the faint scent of his cologne. Our baby kicked for the first time that evening, a flutter of movement that should have been joy, but felt like a reminder of everything Marcus would miss. Thursday morning arrived with cruel normalcy. I woke to my alarm, momentarily forgetting that Marcus wouldn't be there making coffee, humming off-key in the shower, or kissing me goodbye. Reality crashed back as I dressed in the black dress I'd worn to his funeral just 2 days earlier. Meridian Tech's glass building felt foreign as I walked through the lobby. Colleagues offered awkward condolences, their eyes sliding away from mine as if grief were contagious. I made it to my desk, where a stack of urgent project requests waited, because apparently, software bugs don't pause for human tragedy. Janet Morrison, our HR director, appeared at my cubicle before I'd even logged into my computer. Janet was a woman who wore efficiency like armor, her silver hair pulled into a severe bun, her smile as sharp as her tailored suits. Olivia, we need to talk, she said, her voice carrying the tone of someone discussing quarterly reports, rather than addressing a grieving widow. We walked to her office, where she gestured for me to sit across from her imposing mahogany desk. The employee handbook lay open between us, its pages marked with yellow highlighter. I understand you've experienced a loss, Janet began, as if Marcus's death were merely an inconvenience. However, I need to clarify our company policies regarding leave time. I stared at her, my pregnancy brain struggling to process her words. I'm sorry, what? Grief leave isn't company policy, she stated matter-of-factly, flipping through the handbook. We offer bereavement leave for immediate family members, but that's limited to 3 days, which you've already used for the funeral arrangements. But Marcus was my husband, yes, and you received the standard 3 days. The handbook is quite clear on this matter. She turned the book toward me, pointing to a highlighted section. We have sick leave, vacation time, and family medical leave for pregnancy-related issues, but extended grief leave simply isn't something we offer. I looked at the page, my vision blurring. Other policies jumped out at me: paid time off for volunteer work, flexible schedules for continuing education, even pet bereavement leave. But nothing for a widow trying to process the sudden loss of her life partner. I'm 5 months pregnant, I said quietly. I just lost my husband. I'm not sure I can focus on code optimization right now. Janet's expression didn't soften. I understand this is difficult, but we have deadlines to meet. The Morrison account is demanding the security patches by next week, and you're the only one familiar with that particular system architecture. The Morrison account, named after Janet's husband, who owned a chain of retail stores. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was prioritizing her family's business interests over my family's tragedy. If you need time off beyond what's already been used, you'll need to apply for unpaid leave or use your vacation days, she continued. But I should mention that extended absences during probationary periods can affect employment status. Probationary period. Your pregnancy puts you in a transitional category. We need to ensure continued productivity and commitment to the company. She closed the handbook with a soft thud. I'm sure you understand. I understood perfectly. They saw me as a liability, a pregnant woman who might need accommodations, who might prioritize family over corporate profits. Marcus's death had simply made me more expendable in their eyes. Walking back to my desk, I noticed how my colleagues quickly looked away. Had Janet already spread word about my situation? I settled into my chair, staring at the code on my screen, but the numbers and symbols blurred together. My wedding photo sat beside my keyboard, Marcus's smile now feeling like a silent witness to this corporate cruelty. That's when I remembered the USB drive hidden in my desk drawer, containing 3 years of work that could change everything. The encrypted USB drive had been my secret for 3 years, hidden in the back of my desk drawer behind a stack of old project manuals. I'd started the project during my first month at Meridian Tech, when I realized the company's approach to data security was fundamentally flawed. Working late nights and weekends, I developed something revolutionary, a machine learning algorithm that could predict and prevent cyber attacks before they happened. While Meridian Tech's existing security systems were reactive, scrambling to fix problems after they occurred, my software was proactive, learning from patterns and identifying threats in real time. Marcus had been my biggest supporter even when I'd shown him the complex code at midnight, running on coffee and determination. You're creating something that could save companies millions, he'd said, massaging my shoulders as I worked. This is your baby, Liv. Don't let anyone take credit for it. I'd been careful to work on it using my own equipment, on my own time. The code was entirely mine, developed outside of work hours using my own resources. I'd even consulted with a tech lawyer early on to ensure I maintained full ownership rights. The advice had cost me a month's salary, but Marcus had insisted it was worth the investment. Companies steal from their employees all the time, he'd warned me. Especially brilliant women who don't know their own worth. Protect yourself. The software had evolved over 3 years into something extraordinary. My algorithm could process terabytes of data, identifying patterns that human analysts would miss. It could predict cyber attacks with 94% accuracy, giving companies precious time to strengthen their defenses. In the current market, this technology was worth millions. I'd named it Sentinel, a digital guardian that never slept, never got tired, never failed to protect what mattered most. The irony wasn't lost on me now that I couldn't protect what had mattered most to me. Meridian Tech had no idea what I'd created. They saw me as a competent coder who fixed bugs and met deadlines, nothing more. They'd never bothered to ask about my innovation, never encouraged creative thinking, never recognized that their pregnant employee might have a mind capable of revolutionary thinking. I'd kept Sentinel secret partly out of caution and partly out of fear. Fear that they'd claim ownership despite my legal protections. Fear that they'd steal my work and give me nothing in return. Fear that I'd pour my heart into something only to watch others profit from it. But mostly, I'd kept it secret because I was building something for my family's future. Marcus and I had talked about starting our own company someday, about creating something lasting for our children. Sentinel was going to be our ticket to financial independence. Our legacy. The encrypted drive contained not just the code, but 3 years of documentation, testing results, and market analysis. I'd been methodical, professional, treating it like the business asset it was. Patent applications were drafted and ready to file. I had everything I needed to launch my own company, if I ever found the courage. Marcus had been pushing me to make the leap. "You're wasting your talent here," he'd say after I'd tell him about another frustrating day at Meridian Tech. "You could be changing the world instead of fixing their sloppy code." Now, sitting at my desk with Janet's cruel words echoing in my mind, I realized that Marcus had been right. I was wasting my talent, allowing myself to be treated as expendable. When I held the key to my own independence, the baby kicked, a strong movement that made me gasp. My child would never know their father, but they would know their mother was strong enough to build something lasting, something that would ensure their future was secure. I slipped the USB drive into my purse, my decision crystallizing. Meridian Tech had made their position clear. I was disposable, a pregnant inconvenience they could push around. But they had no idea what they were about to lose. Something about Janet's urgency regarding the Morrison account bothered me. In 3 years at Meridian Tech, I'd never seen her so focused on a single client, especially one that seemed relatively small compared to our enterprise contracts. That evening, I decided to dig deeper, working from home. I accessed the company's financial databases, something my security clearance allowed as a senior developer. What I found made my blood run cold. Meridian Tech was hemorrhaging money. The financial records painted a picture of a company in serious trouble. Revenue was down 40% from the previous year. Several major clients had terminated their contracts after security breaches that our outdated systems had failed to prevent. The company was burning through cash reserves at an alarming rate. The Morrison account wasn't just important, it was one of the few keeping the company afloat. But even more telling was what I found in the executive email archives, which I could access through my administrative privileges. An email thread from last month between Janet and CEO Richard Hartley revealed the truth. "We need to reduce headcount by 30% before the end of the quarter. Priority terminations include anyone in probationary status, high-cost employees, and potential liability cases." My name was on a list, but not because of my performance. My evaluations had been consistently excellent. Not because of my skills, I was one of their most capable developers. I was targeted because I was pregnant, because I represented potential maternity leave costs, because they saw me as a liability they couldn't afford. The cruelty of denying Emmy grief leave wasn't just corporate policy, it was strategic. They wanted me to quit. They wanted me to walk away so they could avoid unemployment costs and potential discrimination lawsuits. Making my life unbearable was the plan. I found more. Emails discussing other employees they planned to eliminate. Sarah from accounting, who'd recently been diagnosed with diabetes. Michael from IT, who'd filed a workers' compensation claim for a back injury. Anyone who might cost the company money was being systematically pushed out, but the most damning discovery came in a folder labeled Competitive Analysis. Meridian Tech was desperately trying to develop new security software to win back clients. They'd hired expensive consultants, licensed overpriced software packages, and even attempted to poach talent from competitors. Nothing was working. Their latest security system had a 67% success rate in preventing cyber attacks. Industry standard was 85%. They were failing spectacularly, and they knew it. I stared at my screen, processing the implications. Here was a company treating employees like disposable assets while frantically searching for the very innovation I'd already created. They were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on inferior solutions while the answer sat in their own office, developed by the pregnant woman they saw as expendable. Sentinels. 94% success rate would revolutionize their business. It would save them from bankruptcy, restore their reputation, and secure their future. But they'd never know because they'd driven away the person who could save them. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, as if responding to my surge of determination. I placed my hand on my stomach, feeling the life growing inside me. Marcus's child, our child, who deserved better than a mother who accepted cruelty as normal. I printed out the financial records and email exchanges, creating a paper trail of evidence. If they wanted to play hardball, I'd show them what a real game looked like. They'd underestimated me because I was grieving, because I was pregnant, because I was a woman who'd never stood up for herself, but they'd forgotten one crucial detail. I was also a software developer who understood systems, who knew how to analyze data, who could trace patterns and predict outcomes. And the pattern I saw clearly now was their own destruction, a destruction they were orchestrating through their own greed and short-sightednes. Looking at Marcus's photo on my desk, I made a silent promise. Our child would never have to work for people who valued profits over humanity. I would build something better, something that honored both Marcus's memory and our child's future. The USB drive in my purse suddenly felt heavier, not with the weight of secret code, but with the weight of possibility. Tomorrow I would start building that better future. That weekend, I finally found the courage to go through Marcus's personal belongings. I'd been avoiding it, unable to face the finality of packing away his life. But something about discovering Meridian Tech's betrayal had shifted something inside me. I needed to feel connected to Marcus, to remember why I was fighting. His home office remained exactly as he'd left it that Tuesday morning. Coffee mug still on the desk, half-filled and long cold. A sticky note reminding him to call Johnson about quarterly projections. His reading glasses folded neatly beside his laptop, waiting for eyes that would never see again. I started with his desk drawers, sorting through business cards, old receipts, and the mundane papers of a life interrupted. In the bottom drawer, beneath a stack of financial magazines, I found a leather-bound journal I'd never seen before. My hands trembled as I opened it. Marcus's neat handwriting filled the pages, dated entries going back almost 2 years. I'd had no idea he'd been keeping a journal. The first entries were about work stress, clients, and market predictions. But as I read further, my name appeared more and more frequently. Olivia worked until midnight again on her secret project. I worry she's pushing herself too hard, but I've never seen her so passionate about anything. She's building something extraordinary. Another entry from 6 months ago. Liv showed me her latest breakthrough today. The algorithm's success rate is incredible, better than anything on the market. She doesn't realize her own genius. She keeps saying it's just code. But this could change everything for us. My vision blurred as I read his words. Marcus had understood Sentinel's value better than I had. He'd seen the potential I'd been too modest, too scared, to acknowledge. Entry from 3 months ago made me gasp. Olivia's been having trouble at work. That HR woman treats her like she's already gone, and the pregnancy announcement made things worse. I can see them pushing her toward the door. But they have no idea what they're losing. My wife is going to change the world, and they're too stupid to see it. The final entry was dated the week before his death. If something ever happens to me, I hope Olivia remembers how brilliant she is. She has this way of diminishing her own achievements, of thinking she's not good enough. But she's the smartest person I know, and she deserves to be celebrated, not pushed aside. Our baby is so lucky to have her as a mother. I just wish I could make her see herself the way I see her, unstoppable. I closed the journal and wept, not just from grief but from a complex mixture of loss and revelation. Marcus had been my biggest advocate, even in private, even in thoughts he'd never shared. He'd seen my strength when I couldn't see it myself, but there was more. Tucked inside the journal's back cover was a folded piece of paper, a printout, of an email Marcus had drafted but never sent, addressed to a technology journalist he'd met at a conference. Subject: the next big thing in cybersecurity hidden in plain sight. Dear Rebecca, you asked me to keep you informed about breakthrough technologies. I think I've found something extraordinary, but I need your discretion. My wife has developed a cybersecurity algorithm that could revolutionize the industry. She's too modest to promote it herself, but the preliminary results are staggering. He'd been planning to help me get recognition, to push me into the spotlight I've been avoiding. Marcus had believed in Sentinel's potential enough to risk his professional reputation to promote it. At the bottom of the draft, he'd written a handwritten note, for when Liv is ready to show the world what she can do. I held the paper against my chest, feeling the baby move inside me. Marcus had left me more than memories. He'd left me a roadmap for courage. His journal was filled with observations about my strength, my capabilities, my potential to succeed, beyond anything I'd imagined. Olivia has this quiet confidence when she's coding, one entry read. She solves problems that stump entire teams, but she acts like it's nothing special. She needs to stop hiding her light under a bushel. The last page contained a list he titled, Things to Remember About Liv. Smarter than she thinks she is, stronger than she knows, deserves to be respected and valued, going to be an amazing mother, capable of anything she sets her mind to, worth fighting for. I realized Marcus had been preparing me for this moment without knowing it. Every encouraging word, every push to value myself more, every reminder of my capabilities he'd been building, my confidence for a battle he'd never lived to see. Standing in his office, surrounded by evidence of his unwavering faith in me, I felt something shift. The scared, grieving woman was still there, but she was joined by someone stronger, someone Marcus had always seen, but I'd never fully embraced. Our baby deserved to inherit more than just memories of their father. They deserved to inherit his belief that their mother was capable of extraordinary things. Monday morning brought a surprising visitor to my cubicle. Tom Rodriguez, a senior developer from the cybersecurity team, rarely spoke to anyone outside his department. He was known for his methodical approach to code and his reputation for calling out inefficiencies in company processes. Olivia, he said quietly, glancing around to ensure we weren't overheard. Can we talk privately? We walked to the empty break room on the 3rd floor, where Tom closed the door behind us. He was a tall, lanky man in his 40s with graying temples and intelligent dark eyes that seemed to assess everything around him. I heard about Janet's conversation with you last week, he began, his voice tight with anger. About the grief leave policy. I looked at him in surprise. How did you? Janet wasn't as discreet as she thought. She was discussing your situation with Richard Hartley in the elevator. I happened to be there. His jaw clenched. What she said about you was unconscionable. What did she say? Tom hesitated, then seemed to decide I deserved the truth. She called you a bleeding heart liability, who was playing the widow card for sympathy, said the company couldn't afford to coddle employees who couldn't handle personal problems professionally. The words hit me like physical blows. I'd known. Janet was cold, but hearing her actual words about my grief, about Marcus's death, made my hands shake with rage. There's more, Tom continued. This isn't the first time. Last year, they forced out Linda Chen when her mother was dying of cancer. They claimed her frequent absences affected team productivity. Before that, it was David Park. They eliminated his position 2 weeks after his wife had a stroke. They're systematically targeting people with personal challenges, I said, the pattern becoming clear. Exactly, and they're about to make another round of cuts. Tom reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded paper. I found this in the printer queue by accident. Janet forgot to mark it confidential. It was a resignation letter template, pre-written with blank spaces for names and dates. The language was carefully crafted to make it appear voluntary while protecting the company from wrongful termination lawsuits. They're going to pressure targeted employees to sign these, Tom explained. Make their lives so miserable they'll quit rather than fight. Clean, legal, and cost-effective. I stared at the template, recognizing the strategy. They want me to quit. Without question. But here's what they don't know. I've been documenting everything. Every discriminatory comment, every violation of labor law, every instance of harassment disguised as policy enforcement. He pulled out his phone, showing me a folder labeled Evidence. I've been building a case for months. Why? I asked. Why are you doing this? Tom's expression softened. Because my wife went through something similar at her previous job. Breast cancer diagnosis, and suddenly she was not a team player for needing treatment time. They destroyed her confidence, made her feel worthless. She quit and spiraled into depression. I swore I'd never let that happen to someone else if I could prevent it. He showed me his resignation letter already written, dated for next week. I can't stay here anymore. My conscience won't let me. But before I go, I want to help you fight back. Tom, you don't have to. Yes, I do. But there's something else you should know. He leaned forward conspiratorially. I've seen your work, Olivia. The security patches you write. The elegant solutions you create. You're operating on a level above everyone else here. I've been in this industry for 20 years. And I recognize exceptional talent when I see it. My heart raced. Did he suspect about Sentinel? The Morrison account you've been working on? Your security improvements increased their system efficiency by 300%. That's not luck or coincidence, that's innovation. He paused. I also know you've been working on something personal. Late-night database queries. Research into machine learning applications for cybersecurity. I'm not trying to spy, I just noticed patterns. I felt exposed but also oddly relieved. What are you saying? I'm saying that whatever you're building, it's probably better than anything this company has ever produced. And if you're planning to leave, which you should, I want to help. He handed me a business card. My wife's an employment attorney now. Specializes in discrimination cases. She'd take your case pro bono just to stick it to companies like this. The business card read, Maria Rodriguez Employment Law. Below it, Tom had written his personal email and phone number. There's also this, he continued, pulling out another card. Rebecca Chen, tech journalist at TechCrunch. She's Linda's sister, the employee they forced out. She's been looking for a story about Meridian Tech's practices. She'd love to hear from you. I stared at the cards, feeling like Tom was offering me weapons for a war one hadn't realized I was already fighting. They think they can bully you into disappearing quietly, Tom said. But they picked the wrong person to mess with. I can see it in your eyes. You're done being pushed around. He was right. Something had crystallized since reading Marcus's journal, since discovering the company's true financial state. I wasn't the scared, grieving woman they thought they could manipulate. Thank you, I said, meaning it completely. For everything. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when we bring this whole rotten system down. Tom smiled grimly. They have no idea what's coming. That evening, I spread Tom's evidence across my dining room table alongside my own research. The legal documents he'd shared painted a damning picture of systematic discrimination at Meridian Tech, but I needed to understand exactly what laws they'd broken and how to use that knowledge strategically. Started with federal employment law, researching the Family and Medical Leave Act, pregnancy discrimination protections, and wrongful termination statutes. The more I read, the clearer it became that Meridian Tech had violated multiple regulations, denying adequate bereavement leave while offering other types of discretionary time off could constitute discriminatory treatment. Their probationary status designation for pregnant employees violated the Pregnancy Discrimination Act. The systematic targeting of employees with health issues or family crises created a pattern of disparate impact that employment attorneys dream about. Using my database skills, I created a comprehensive spreadsheet documenting every incident Tom had shared, cross-referenced with relevant legal codes and potential damages. Linda Chen's cancer-related termination, David Park's elimination after his wife's stroke, my own situation with the grief leave denial and pregnancy discrimination. But I needed more than anecdotal evidence. I needed documentation. The next day at work, I began systematically gathering proof. Email threads discussing employee liability assessments, meeting notes about reducing headcount among high-risk employees, financial projections that specifically mentioned saving costs by eliminating workers with ongoing personal issues. My security clearance gave me access to systems that most employees couldn't reach. I downloaded performance reviews showing that terminated employees had received excellent ratings right up until their personal crises began. I found budget documents proving the company could afford proper leave policies, but chose not to implement them. The most damaging evidence was a recorded conference call I discovered in the executive archive. Janet and CEO Richard Hartley discussing my situation specifically. The Bennett woman is becoming a problem. Pregnancy plus recent widowhood equals maximum liability exposure. We need her gone before she starts demanding accommodations or filing claims. Richard's voice was clear on the recording. Handle it quietly. Make her want to leave. Hostile environment, increased pressure, whatever it takes. Just document everything as performance-related in case she fights back. I sat in my car after downloading the file, hands shaking as I listened to them discuss destroying my career like it was a routine business decision. They weren't just cruel, they were calculating, methodical in their cruelty. That evening, I called Maria Rodriguez, Tom's wife. Her voice was warm but professional as I explained my situation. Tom told me to expect your call, she said. What you're describing is a textbook case of multiple employment law violations. But I need to ask, do you have documentation? Extensive documentation, I replied, thinking of the evidence files now organized on my laptop. Emails, recorded calls, financial records, performance reviews, systematic patterns across multiple employees. There was a pause. Olivia, this could be a significant case. Not just for damages but for legal precedent. Companies like Meridian Tech count on employees being too intimidated or financially stressed to fight back. They rarely face real consequences. What kind of damages are we talking about? Lost wages, emotional distress, punitive damages for willful discrimination, attorney fees. Conservative estimate for a case this strong, high 6 figures, possibly 7. But money isn't the only victory here. You could force them to change their policies, protect future employees. 7 figures. The number was staggering, but what struck me more was her mention of protecting future employees. Marcus would have wanted that, ensuring no other family suffered what we'd endured. There's something else, I continued. I've developed some intellectual property during my time there, completely on my own time, using my own resources. But I want to ensure they can't claim ownership. Smart thinking. Companies often try to claim rights to employee innovations, even when they have no legal basis. We'll need to document the development timeline, ownership of resources used, and any relevant employment contract clauses. After we hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. Not just for justice, but for the possibility of building something better from the wreckage of this experience. I opened Marcus's journal again, reading his entry about me being stronger than I know. Tomorrow, I would file the patent applications for Sentinel. By week's end, I would deliver my evidence to Maria Rodriguez. And within the month, Meridian Tech would discover that the grieving, pregnant woman they'd tried to dispose of was about to become their biggest nightmare. The baby kicked, a strong movement that felt like approval. Marcus had always said our child would inherit the best of both of us, his determination and my intelligence. Looking at the evidence spread across my table, I realized our baby was about to inherit something else. A mother who refused to be broken, who turned betrayal into strength, who built justice from the ashes of cruelty. Meridian Tech had made the mistake of underestimating a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Rebecca Chen, the tech journalist Tom had connected me with, suggested I reach out to someone she thought could help. Dr. Elena Vasquez, CEO of Quantum Dynamics, one of the most successful cybersecurity firms on the West Coast. Rebecca had interviewed her several times and thought she might offer valuable perspective. Elena built her company from nothing after being pushed out of a male-dominated firm, Rebecca explained over coffee. She's passionate about supporting women in tech who are facing discrimination. Here's her card from a conference last year. The business card was elegant, simple, just Elena's name, title, and contact information. But Rebecca had written on the back, "For women who refuse to be silenced." I spent 2 days crafting an email to Elena, explaining my situation without revealing too much about Sentinel. I mentioned my legal case against Meridian Tech, my pregnancy, and my struggle to find direction after Marcus's death. I wasn't sure she'd even respond. Successful CEOs rarely had time for strangers' problems. Her reply came within hours. "Coffee tomorrow at 2 p.m? I'll be in your city for meetings. Address attached. Your story sounds familiar. I'd like to help." Elena chose a quiet cafe downtown, away from the business district. I recognized her immediately from her company's website. Striking woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to assess everything around her. "Olivia," she said warmly, standing to greet me. "Thank you for reaching out. Please sit." We settled into a corner booth, and Elena ordered us both coffee before turning her full attention to me. "Rebecca mentioned you're dealing with pregnancy discrimination and wrongful termination issues. Tell me everything." I found myself opening up to this virtual stranger in ways I hadn't with anyone since Marcus's death. Elena listened without interrupting, occasionally asking clarifying questions, her expression growing more serious as I described Meridian Tech's systematic targeting of vulnerable employees. "Textbook predatory behavior," she said finally. "They count on employees being too overwhelmed to fight back. Single mothers, people with health issues, anyone dealing with personal crisis. They're easy targets. Rebecca mentioned you'd faced something similar." Eleanor's smile was rueful. 20 years ago, I was the only female senior engineer at a major defense contractor. When I got pregnant with my daughter, suddenly my security clearance was under review, my projects were reassigned, and my manager started documenting every minor mistake. They wanted me gone. "What did you do?" I fought. "Sued them, won a substantial settlement, and used the money to start Quantum Dynamics. Best decision I ever made." She leaned forward. "But I had advantages you might not: a supportive spouse, financial cushion, industry connections. What's your situation?" I hesitated, then decided to trust her. "I've been working on something in my spare time. A cybersecurity algorithm that could be revolutionary, but I'm not sure how to leverage it." Elena's eyes sharpened with interest. "Tell me more." I explained Sentinel's capabilities without revealing technical details, describing its success rates and potential applications. Elena asked increasingly sophisticated questions that demonstrated her deep understanding of the cybersecurity market. Olivia, she said finally, if what you're describing is real, you're sitting on a gold mine. Current market valuation for that kind of innovation? Tens of millions, minimum. The number took my breath away. I've been thinking about filing patents, maybe starting my own company eventually. Not eventually, now. Eleanor's voice was firm. The cybersecurity market is exploding. Companies are desperate for better solutions after high-profile breaches. Your timing is perfect. But I'm grieving, pregnant, dealing with a lawsuit, which makes you incredibly motivated to succeed. Some of the best companies are built by people who have nothing left to lose. Elena pulled out her phone. I'm going to give you 3 contacts. A patent attorney who specializes in tech IP, a venture capital firm that invests in early-stage cybersecurity companies, and a business consultant who helps women launch tech startups. She wrote names and numbers on napkins, each introduction carrying her personal endorsement. These people owe me favors. Mention my name, they'll see you immediately. Elena, I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me, succeed. Show every company like Meridian Tech that they can't crush talented women without consequences. She paused, studying my face. What did your husband think about your project? The question caught me off guard. He believed in it completely. He kept pushing me to take risks, to value my own work more. Smart man, he saw what you're still learning to see, that you're not just a victim of circumstances, you're a creator of solutions. Your grief is real, your anger is justified, but your talent is your power. Elena reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I started quantum dynamics while pregnant and fighting a discrimination lawsuit. It was terrifying and exhausting, but it was also liberating. For the first time in my career, I was building something entirely my own. Did you ever regret it? Never. My daughter grew up watching her mother build something meaningful instead of accepting whatever crumbs some company threw her way. She's now a software engineer herself, and she's never doubted her own worth, because she watched me fight for mine. As we prepared to leave, Elena handed me her personal card. Call me next week after you've spoken with my contacts. If your technology is as good as you say, I might be interested in being your first investor. Walking to my car, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before Marcus's death, excitement about the future. Elena had seen possibilities I'd been too scared to imagine, had validated dreams I thought were unrealistic. That evening, I sat in Marcus's office, surrounded by evidence of his faith in me, and made a decision. I wouldn't just fight Meridian Tech, I would build something that made their rejection irrelevant. I would create the company Marcus had always believed I could build. The legacy our child deserved to inherit. The business cards Elena had given me lay on the desk like invitations to a new life. Tomorrow I would start making calls. Tonight, I would draft my resignation letter, not because they'd broken me, but because I'd outgrown them. The cramping started during my meeting with the patent attorney Elena had recommended. Sharp, rhythmic pains that made me grip the conference table edge while trying to maintain focus on intellectual property strategies. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the attorney, noticed my discomfort immediately. Olivia, are you all right? You look pale. I'm fine, I lied, but another wave of pain made me gasp. This wasn't normal pregnancy discomfort, something was wrong. We're finishing this later, Dr. Walsh said firmly. You need medical attention, now. She drove me to the hospital herself, staying with me until my obstetrician arrived. Dr. Sarah Kim had been monitoring my pregnancy since the beginning, and her concerned expression as she reviewed my symptoms made my heart race. Your blood pressure is elevated, and these contractions are concerning at 23 weeks. She explained after the examination. I'm admitting you for observation. The next 12 hours blurred together in a haze of monitors, 4 drips, and medical terminology I didn't want to understand. Preterm labor, placental stress, cervical changes that could signal early delivery. The baby's too young, Dr. Kim explained gently. If labor progresses, we're looking at serious complications. I need you to understand the gravity of this situation. I lay in the hospital bed, watching the fetal monitor trace my baby's heartbeat, and felt something break inside me. I was losing everything, Marcus, my job, and now possibly our child. The stress of fighting Meridian Tech, of building a legal case while grieving, had pushed my body beyond its limits. Dr. Kim sat beside my bed, her voice gentle but firm. Olivia, I need to ask about your stress levels. Has anything changed recently? New pressures, emotional trauma, work demands. I laughed. Italy, where do I start? Over the next hour, I told her everything. Marcus's death, Meridian Tech's cruelty, the discrimination lawsuit, my plans to start a company while 6 months pregnant. Dr. Kim listened without judgment, occasionally making notes. Stress doesn't directly cause preterm labor, she said finally, but it can be a significant contributing factor, especially when combined with grief and major life changes. Your body is telling you that something needs to change. I can't stop fighting, I said. They destroyed my husband's memory, treated me like garbage, and they're doing it to other people. If I don't stand up to them, you don't have to stop fighting, but you need to fight smarter, not harder. Dr. Kim pulled up my chart on her tablet. I'm prescribing modified bed rest. You can work, but only from home, limited hours, minimal stress. This baby needs you to prioritize their survival over everything else right now. The word survival hit me like ice water. I'd been so focused on justice and building my future that I'd risked the most precious thing I had left Marcus's child, our baby, the only part of him that would continue in this world. Will the baby be okay? If you follow my instructions exactly, yes, but Olivia, this is your body's warning shot. Ignore it, and we could be looking at a delivery at 24 or 25 weeks. The survival rates aren't something you want to gamble with. That evening, alone in my hospital room, I called Maria Rodriguez to explain the situation. Her response was immediate and supportive. Your health and your baby come first, she said firmly. The legal case will proceed whether you're in bed rest or not. We have enough evidence to move forward without putting additional stress on you. But what about depositions, court appearances? We'll handle everything remotely when possible and postpone what we can't. Olivia, discrimination law exists partly to protect pregnant women from exactly this situation. Don't let them win by sacrificing your child's health for the fight. Tom visited the next day, bringing flowers and an unexpected revelation. One submitted. My resignation yesterday, he announced. But I also sent copies of all our evidence to the State Labor Board and the EEOC. They're opening an investigation. Tom, you didn't have to. Yes, I did. And there's more. Remember that recorded call where Janet and Richard discussed making your life miserable? I sent it to Rebecca Chun. Her article about Meridian Tech's systematic discrimination goes live tomorrow morning. I stared at him. You leaked the story? You're in the hospital because of their cruelty. Your baby's life is at risk because they decided to torture a grieving widow. Someone needs to pay for that. His expression was grimmer than I'd ever seen it. They wanted to destroy you quietly. Now let's see how they handle some public scrutiny. The medical records Dr. Kim provided painted a stark picture of stress-induced pregnancy complications. Elevated blood pressure that could lead to preeclampsia. Irregular contractions that threatened preterm delivery. Clear documentation that workplace harassment had contributed to a medical emergency. This strengthens your case enormously, Maria explained during a bedside consultation. They can't claim their actions were harmless when those actions put you in the hospital. We're adding medical expenses, potential long-term health impacts, and endangerment of your unborn child to the damages. But lying in that hospital bed, watching my baby's heartbeat on the monitor, I realized something had shifted in my priorities. Justice was still important, but it couldn't come at the cost of my child's life. Marcus would never forgive me if I sacrificed our baby for revenge against people who weren't worth our child's smallest fingernail. Dr. Kim discharged me after 3 days with strict instructions. Work from home only. No more than 4 hours per day. Avoid stressful situations. And return immediately if symptoms returned. She also provided documentation that would become crucial evidence, medical records clearly stating that workplace harassment had contributed to my pregnancy complications. Your baby is depending on you to make the right choices, she said as I prepared to leave. Everything else can wait. Driving home, I placed my hand on my stomach and made a new promise to the life growing inside me. I would still fight, but I would fight as a mother first, protecting what mattered most while building something worthy of Marcus's memory. The war against Meridian Tech would continue, but it would be fought on my terms, at my pace, with my child's welfare as the ultimate priority. Working from my home office on modified bed rest, I focused on securing the legal foundation for Sentinel. Dr. Jennifer Walsh had fast-tracked my patent applications after my hospitalization, understanding that timing was crucial for both my health and my legal protection. We're filing 3 separate patents, she explained during our video conference. The core algorithm, the machine learning implementation, and the real-time threat prediction system. This creates a comprehensive IP fortress around your innovation. Patent filing documents spread across my desk represented 3 years of nights and weekends, of breakthrough moments and incremental improvements. Each page documented not just code and processes, but my journey from employee to innovator to entrepreneur. The most satisfying part was the inventor's statement, where I detailed the development timeline. Every entry was dated, every breakthrough documented with my personal notes and Marcus's encouraging comments. The record clearly showed that Sentinel had been developed entirely outside of work hours, using my own equipment, funded by my own resources. Meridian Tech has no claim whatsoever, Dr. Walsh confirmed. Your documentation is meticulous. Even if they tried to argue ownership, your evidence would destroy their case in court. Filing the patents felt like drawing a line in the sand. This technology was mine, created through my intelligence and dedication, protected now by federal law. No corporate bully could steal what I'd built. No matter how they tried to intimidate me. The baby kicked as I signed the final documents, a strong movement that made me smile. Your inheritance is officially protected, I whispered, placing my hand on my stomach, but the patents were just the beginning. Elena Vasquez had introduced me to Marcus Chen, no relation to the journalist, a venture capital partner who specialized in early-stage cybersecurity investments. Our phone consultation had gone better than I dared hope. Based on your preliminary data, Sentinel could capture significant market share within 18 months, Marcus had explained. Current cybersecurity solutions are reactive and fragmented. Your proactive approach addresses the industry's biggest weakness. He'd requested a formal pitch deck and technical demonstration for the following week. The timing felt surreal while Meridian Tech was dealing with the fallout from Rebecca Chin's expose. I was preparing to launch the company that would make their rejection irrelevant. The demonstration I prepared was carefully crafted to showcase Sentinel's capabilities without revealing proprietary details. Using sanitized datasets, I showed how the algorithm could predict cyber attacks with 94% accuracy, compared to industry averages of 67 to 85%. This isn't just an improvement, I explained to my laptop camera during a practice run. This is a paradigm shift. Instead of fixing problems after they occur, Sentinel prevents them from happening. The financial projections Elena had helped me develop were staggering. Conservative estimates showed $50 million in revenue within 3 years. Aggressive projections, assuming rapid market adoption, reached $200 million. But beyond the numbers, I was building something Marcus had always believed: I could create a company that valued innovation over politics, that treated employees as assets rather than liabilities, that proved brilliant ideas could come from unexpected places. The irony wasn't lost on me that while Meridian Tech was hemorrhaging talent and reputation, I was attracting interest from some of the industry's most respected investors. Rebecca Chun's article had exposed their discrimination practices to the entire tech community, making them toxic to potential employees and partners. Tom called that evening with an update on the company's situation. 3 more senior developers resigned this week, he reported. The Morrison account is threatening to terminate their contract after reading about the discrimination lawsuit. Stock price dropped 12% since the article published. Any word from Janet or Richard? Radio silence publicly, but my contacts say they're in full crisis mode. Emergency board meetings, damage control consultations, the works. Tom paused. They're finally realizing what they lost when they pushed you out. That realization brought me no satisfaction, only a sense of justice delayed but not denied. They'd gambled that a grieving, pregnant woman would be too broken to fight back. Instead, they'd motivated me to build something that would outlast their company. The patent filing confirmation arrived via email that evening, official and final. 3 separate patents, all filed under my name, all protecting the technology that would secure my child's future. I printed the confirmation pages and placed them in Marcus's journal, next to his entry about my potential to change the world. He'd seen this moment before I'd believed it was possible, had faith in my capabilities when I'd barely recognized them myself. The baby moved again, a gentle reminder of what I was building this for. Not just justice against those who'd wronged me, but a legacy worthy of the love Marcus and I had shared. A foundation strong enough to support our child's dreams. Tomorrow I would pitch Sentinel to venture capitalists. Next week I would testify in my discrimination case. Within the month, I would launch the company that proved grieving widows could be the most dangerous opponents, because they had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The attempted breach of my home network came at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. Exactly 2 weeks after my patent filings became public record. I discovered it only because pregnancy insomnia had me awake, working on my pitch presentation. When my security monitoring system triggered an alert, someone was trying to access my personal servers. The intrusion attempt was sophisticated, but not sophisticated enough. Whoever was behind it had underestimated that the woman they were trying to hack had spent 3 years developing next-generation cybersecurity software. My home network was protected by early versions of Sentinel's monitoring algorithms. I watched, in real time, as the attackers probed for vulnerabilities, their digital fingerprints automatically captured and analyzed by my system. The IP addresses traced back to a server farm in Virginia, but the attack patterns were too familiar. They matched the security protocols used by Meridian Tech's IT department. My hands shook as I documented the intrusion attempt, screenshots capturing every detail of their failed breach, the timestamps, the specific attack vectors they'd attempted, the retreat pattern when my defenses held all of it, pointed to corporate espionage. They were trying to steal Sentinel. The next morning, I called Dr. Walsh immediately. Jennifer, they tried to hack my system. Meridian Tech attempted to steal my patents. Her response was swift and furious. Forward me everything, every log file, every screenshot, every piece of evidence. This is a federal crime, Olivia. We're talking about criminal charges now, not just civil litigation. But the evidence was more damning than just the failed hack. In reviewing my security logs from the past month, I discovered a pattern of surveillance that made my blood run cold. Multiple attempts to access my email accounts, probes of my cloud storage, even attempts to compromise my smartphone. They'd been watching me since I'd left the company. The most disturbing discovery came when I analyzed the metadata from their attacks. The sophisticated tools they'd used weren't commercially available. They were government-grade hacking software that should have been impossible for a private company to obtain. Tom's call that afternoon confirmed my worst suspicions. Olivia, I need to tell you something. Before I left, I had Janet on a call with someone about neutralizing the Bennett threat. She mentioned having contacts who could handle technical problems discreetly. What kind of contacts? The kind that used to work for 3-letter agencies. Richard Hartley has connections to former NSA contractors through his military service. They've been using their network to dig up dirt on employees who sue them. The implications were staggering. Not only had they tried to steal my intellectual property, but they brought in professional hackers to do it. This wasn't just corporate misconduct, it was organized criminal activity. Spent the next day working with a cybersecurity consultant Elena had recommended. A former FBI agent named David Park who specialized in corporate espionage cases. Analysis of my evidence was thorough and damning. This is textbook corporate theft, he explained via video call. The attack patterns suggest they were specifically looking for source code, patent documents, and financial projections. They wanted to steal your technology before you could bring it to market. Can we prove it was them? The digital fingerprints are conclusive, but more importantly, they made a crucial mistake. David pulled up a technical analysis on his screen. The malware they used to attempt the breach. It's the same strain that was found on Linda Chun's computer after she was terminated. And David Parks, the employee whose wife had the stroke. My stomach dropped. They've been doing this to other people for at least 2 years, based on the code signatures. Anyone who sued them, anyone who had valuable skills or information, they systematically tried to hack them after termination. But the pattern was clear and horrifying. Meridian Tech wasn't just discriminating against vulnerable employees, they were stealing from them, using professional hackers to pilfer intellectual property and personal information from people they'd already destroyed professionally. Maria Rodriguez's reaction to the evidence was immediate and decisive. We're filing additional criminal complaints with the FBI. Wire fraud, computer fraud, conspiracy to commit theft of intellectual property. This company is going down. But the most satisfying moment came that evening when Rebecca Chun called with breaking news. Olivia, I just got confirmation from my sources. The FBI is opening a criminal investigation into Meridian Tech's hacking activities. Your evidence triggered a federal probe. How did you? Because they weren't just targeting former employees. They'd been hired by competitors to steal technology from other companies too. Your case broke open a much larger criminal enterprise. I sat in Marcus's office, surrounded by evidence of corporate criminality that would have been impossible to imagine weeks ago. What had started as a discrimination lawsuit had uncovered a conspiracy involving theft, surveillance, and federal crimes. Email trail I discovered painted the complete picture. Communications between Janet Morrison and Richard Hartley, discussing technological acquisitions through alternative channels. Payment records for consulting services that were actually fees paid to criminal hackers. Target lists that included not just former employees, but competitors' key personnel. Meridian Tech had built their struggling business model on stolen innovation, targeting anyone who threatened their profits or possessed technology they coveted. They turned corporate espionage into a systematic operation, believing they were too smart and too connected to face consequences. The baby kicked. A strong movement that felt like approval. Our child would inherit a world where justice prevailed, where brilliant women like their mother couldn't be silenced by corporate bullies who confused cruelty with strategy. Tomorrow, I would hand over my evidence to FBI agents. Next week, federal prosecutors would begin building criminal cases. But tonight, I would finish my presentation for the venture capital meeting, secure in the knowledge that my technology was protected not just by patents, but by federal law. Enforcement. Meridian Tech had made their final mistake. They'd tried to steal from someone who built better defenses than they could ever imagine breaking. The conference room at Rodriguez and Associates felt like a war room, with evidence boxes stacked along the walls and whiteboards covered in case timelines. Maria Rodriguez had assembled a team of 3 attorneys to handle what had evolved from a simple discrimination case into a federal criminal matter. Olivia, I want you to understand the scope of what we're dealing with, Maria began, gesturing to the organized evidence spread across the conference table. This isn't just about your wrongful treatment anymore. It's about a criminal enterprise that's been operating for years. Senior partner James Morrison, no relation to Meridian Tech's Janet Morrison, had flown in from their San Francisco office, specifically for this meeting. His expertise in federal criminal law had become essential as the case expanded beyond employment issues. The FBI investigation has uncovered evidence that Meridian Tech operated essentially as a criminal organization, James explained. They systematically targeted employees for termination, then stole their intellectual property through illegal hacking operations. Your case was the thread that unraveled the entire scheme. The legal retainer agreement they presented was more comprehensive than anything I'd expected. Rodriguez and Associates was taking the case on a contingency basis, meaning I owed nothing unless we won. But more importantly, they were coordinating with federal prosecutors to ensure the criminal case strengthened our civil litigation. Conservative damages estimate, Maria consulted her notes. Between your discrimination claim, the attempted theft of intellectual property, medical expenses from pregnancy complications, and punitive damages, we're looking at high 7 figures. Possibly 8. The number was staggering, but Maria quickly clarified that money wasn't the primary objective. This case will set legal precedent about corporate espionage against former employees. Every tech worker in the country will benefit from the protections we establish. Associate Attorney Lisa Linda Chun's younger sister, as it turned out, had joined the team specifically because of the personal connection to Meridian Tech's victims. They destroyed my sister's career and tried to steal her consulting business's client lists after she left. This is about justice for her and dozens of other people they've hurt. The evidence review took 3 hours. Every document, every email, every piece of digital forensics was catalogued and analyzed for its impact on our various legal claims. The attempted hacking of my systems provided the strongest evidence of criminal intent, but the discrimination case remained the foundation of our civil litigation. Your medical records are particularly powerful, Lisa explained. Clear documentation that workplace harassment caused pregnancy complications creates both medical malpractice and intentional infliction of emotional distress claims. But the most compelling evidence was Marcus's journal, which had become central to our emotional damages argument. His entries about my capabilities and their treatment of me painted a picture of a company that had systematically undervalued and abused a brilliant employee. Juries connect with personal stories, Maria noted. Your husband's words about your potential, contrasted with their cruelty after his death, that narrative is powerful beyond any financial calculation. James outlined the timeline for both criminal and civil proceedings. Federal prosecutors are moving quickly on the criminal charges. Wire fraud, computer fraud, conspiracy. Meridian Tech's executives could face significant prison time. Our civil case will follow the criminal trial, which strengthens our position enormously. What about interim relief? I asked. The medical bills, living expenses while this plays out? We're seeking immediate injunctive relief and emergency damages, Lisa replied. Your pregnancy complications and loss of income create urgent financial needs that justify expedited proceedings. The team had also coordinated with Elena Vasquez's legal team to ensure that my startup plans wouldn't conflict with the litigation. Your right to compete and innovate is protected, James assured me. In fact, your success with Sentinel strengthens our argument about what they lost by discriminating against you. As the meeting concluded, Maria handed me a business card with contact information for their 24-hour legal hotline. If Meridian Tech contacts you directly, attempts any intimidation, or tries to settle privately, call us immediately. Don't respond to anything without legal counsel. The weight of legal protection felt both empowering and overwhelming. 6 months ago, I'd been a grieving employee who accepted corporate cruelty as inevitable. Now I was the center of a federal criminal investigation that could reshape employment law for tech workers nationwide. Walking to my car, I reflected on how the legal system had become my ally rather than an intimidating obstacle. Maria's team, treated me as a partner in seeking justice, not just a client with grievances. They understood that this case was about more than financial compensation. It was about ensuring that powerful companies couldn't destroy vulnerable employees with impunity. The baby moved as I settled into the driver's seat, a gentle reminder of what we were fighting for. Legal protection was important, but more important was the precedent we'd set for future mothers, future widows, future employees who faced discrimination and abuse. By the time I reached home, 3 voicemails were waiting from reporters seeking comment on the FBI investigation. The story was becoming national news, and public opinion was rallying behind the pregnant widow who'd exposed corporate criminality. But the most important call was from Dr. Kim's office, confirming that my stress levels had stabilized and that the baby was developing normally. Justice was important, but not at the cost of my child's health. Everything else, the litigation, the criminal case, the media attention, was secondary to ensuring our baby's safe arrival. The legal war against Meridian Tech was just beginning, but I was no longer fighting alone. The formal legal notice arrived at Meridian Tech's headquarters on a Thursday morning, delivered by federal marshals as part of the criminal investigation. But I'd arranged for a private process server to deliver my civil cease and desist letter simultaneously, ensuring that Janet Morrison and Richard Hartley received both notices at the same time. Maria Rodriguez had crafted the civil notice with surgical precision: cease and desist all unauthorized access, surveillance, and theft of intellectual property belonging to Olivia Bennett. The document laid out every piece of evidence we'd gathered, every law they'd broken, every federal crime they'd committed. It read like an indictment because, in many ways, it was a preview of the criminal charges coming their way. Tom called me an hour after delivery with a first-hand account of the chaos. "I've never seen anything like it," he reported. Janet was screaming at Richard in the hallway. Emergency legal meetings, hushed phone calls, people running around like the building was on fire. Any official response? Radio silence publicly. But my contact in accounting says they've authorized emergency legal spending. 7 figures for crisis management and criminal defense attorneys. The silence didn't last long. By afternoon, Meridian Tech's expensive crisis management team had crafted a response that revealed their desperation. A press release claimed they were confident that all actions taken were within legal bounds, and that they would vigorously defend against baseless accusations from a disgruntled former employee. Calling me a disgruntled former employee was their first strategic mistake. Rebecca Chen's follow-up article the next morning tore apart that characterization with devastating efficiency. Bennett, who lost her husband while pregnant and was denied grief leave, uncovered evidence of systematic corporate espionage that the FBI is now investigating as part of a federal criminal probe. Characterizing the victim of criminal activity as disgruntled reveals the same callous disregard for employees that led to these charges. That their real panic became evident when I received an unexpected visitor that Friday afternoon. A luxury sedan pulled into my driveway, and Janet Morrison herself emerged, looking haggard and desperate. She'd driven to my house personally, apparently hoping to bypass my legal team. I watched through my window as she approached, then called Maria immediately. "Don't answer the door," Maria instructed. "Don't speak to her. This is likely an attempt to gather evidence for their defense or to intimidate you into backing down." Janet knocked persistently, then actually had the audacity to call my name through the door. "Olivia, we need to talk. This situation has gotten out of hand. There's room for reasonable discussion here." I stood quietly inside, recording her attempts at contact while following my attorney's instructions not to engage. After 20 minutes, she finally left, but not before leaving a business card with a handwritten note. "Call me. We can work this out privately." The note was immediately forwarded to Maria, who recognized it as potential evidence of witness tampering or obstruction of justice. "Federal prosecutors will be very interested in this," she assured me. "Companies under criminal investigation aren't supposed to contact victims directly. By Monday, Meridian Tech's board of directors had apparently realized the gravity of their situation. A formal settlement offer arrived through their attorneys. Lowball attempt to make the civil case disappear before the criminal trial could begin. The offer was insulting. $250,000 in exchange for dropping all claims and signing a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. They wanted to silence me for less than what my medical bills and lost wages already totaled. Counter-offer, Maria suggested with a smile that could have cut glass. $8 million. Full admission of wrongdoing, implementation of employee protection policies, and no non-disclosure agreement. Oh, and Richard Hartley's resignation. Their response came within hours. Complete rejection of our terms, coupled with threats to pursue all available legal remedies against false accusations. That afternoon, federal prosecutors unsealed the criminal indictments. Richard Hartley, Janet Morrison, and 2 other executives were charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, computer fraud and abuse, and theft of trade secrets. The charges carried potential sentences of up to 20 years in federal prison. The news broke on every major tech publication simultaneously. Meridian Tech executives indicted in corporate espionage scheme. FBI uncovers systematic hacking of former employees. Pregnant widow's lawsuit exposes federal crimes. My phone rang constantly with interview requests, but Maria had prepared me for media attention. Stay focused on the core message, she'd advised. This is about protecting all employees from corporate abuse and criminal behavior. Elena Vasquez called that evening with an update that put the situation in broader perspective. 3 major clients have terminated their contracts with Meridian Tech since the indictments. Their stock price has dropped 60%. Word in the industry is they won't survive this. Good, I replied, surprising myself with the vehemence in my voice. More than good, it's justice. But Olivia, there's something else. My venture capital contacts are more interested in Sentinel than ever. Nothing attracts tech investors like a brilliant entrepreneur who's defeating corporate criminals. The baby kicked as if celebrating our victory, a strong movement that reminded me why I was fighting. Not just for justice against those who'd wronged me, but for a future where our child would never have to endure what I'd experienced. Meridian Tech had tried to destroy me quietly, believing that a grieving, pregnant woman would be too broken to fight back. Instead, they created their own worst nightmare, a victim with nothing left to lose, everything to fight for, and evidence that could send them to federal prison. The confrontation was just beginning, but they'd already lost the war. The second settlement offer arrived 3 weeks after the criminal indictments, delivered by a team of attorneys who represented Meridian Tech's insurance company rather than the company itself. Their desperation was obvious. The insurers were trying to limit their exposure before the company completely collapsed. $2 million, announced lead counsel Margaret Foster, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s who specialized in corporate crisis management. Full settlement of all civil claims with standard confidentiality provisions. We met in the conference room at Rodriguez and Associates, with my legal team arranged across from Meridian Tech's representatives. The atmosphere was tense, professional, and charged with the weight of federal criminal charges hanging over everyone's heads. Counteroffer, Maria replied calmly. $15 million, full admission of wrongdoing, comprehensive policy, reforms, executive resignations, and no confidentiality agreement whatsoever. Margaret Foster's assistant actually gasped at the number. Foster herself maintained her poker face, but I caught the brief flicker of panic in her eyes. That's completely unreasonable, Foster responded. Ms. Bennett's actual damages don't justify such excessive compensation. Actual damages? Maria opened a thick binder. Medical expenses from stress-induced pregnancy complications. $47,000. Lost wages and benefits. $180,000. Emotional distress from harassment of a grieving widow. Incalculable. Attempted theft of intellectual property worth tens of millions. Priceless. And that's before we discuss punitive damages, James Morrison added. Criminal conspiracy, federal computer crimes, systematic violation of employment law. Juries tend to get creative with punitive awards in cases like this. Foster's team requested a recess to consult with their clients. Through the conference room's glass walls, I watched them huddled in urgent discussion, phones pressed to ears, laptops open to what were obviously crisis calculations. Break. Maria reviewed our position. They're in an impossible situation. The criminal case makes our civil claims virtually unbeatable. If Hartley and Morrison go to prison, the civil jury will want blood. What about the confidentiality issue? I asked. That's their biggest problem. They need silence to survive. But we won't sell it. Your story is too important for other employees facing similar situations. When negotiations resumed, Foster had a new proposal: $5 million policy reforms, and a limited confidentiality agreement that allows discussion of workplace issues but prohibits disclosure of proprietary business information. $8 million, Maria countered. Full policy implementation supervised by an independent monitor, resignation of all executives involved in the conspiracy, and confidentiality limited only to legitimate trade secrets unrelated to the discrimination. The dance continued for hours. Each offer revealed more of their desperation. Each counter-offer demonstrated our strengthening position. Foster's team was clearly operating under instructions to settle at almost any cost. The alternative was a public trial during criminal proceedings, which would be corporate suicide. There's something else you should consider, Foster said during the afternoon session. Meridian Tech's financial situation is precarious. If the company fails before settlement, your recovery options become limited. It was a threat disguised as information, but Maria was ready, which is why we're prepared to pursue personal assets of the executives involved. Richard Hartley's real estate holdings alone are worth $12 million. The mention of personal liability visibly shook Foster's composure. They'd assumed the corporate veil would protect individual defendants, but criminal conspiracy charges pierced that protection entirely. We need more time to consider your terms, Foster finally admitted. 24 hours, Maria replied. After that, we proceed to trial and let a jury decide what justice looks like. That evening, Elena called with intelligence from her industry contacts. Meridian Tech is hemorrhaging clients and employees. 3 more executives resigned today, and their largest remaining contract was just terminated. They're financially finished whether they settle with you or not. Then why settle at all? Because bankruptcy doesn't eliminate personal liability for criminal acts. Hartley and Morrison need this resolved before their criminal trial, or they'll face both prison and personal financial ruin. The baby kicked as I processed the implications. We'd won not just justice for me, but accountability for every employee they'd wronged. The company that had treated grieving widows as disposable problems was about to discover that some problems fought back. The final offer came. The next morning, $7.5 million. Comprehensive policy reforms including external monitoring, resignation of all indicted executives, and confidentiality provisions limited to legitimate trade secrets, unrelated to employment practices. Deal, Maria said, after consulting with me privately. But we want immediate payment and a public statement acknowledging their wrongdoing. The settlement proposal they agreed to was more than financial victory, it was a complete vindication. The public statement would acknowledge systematic discrimination, illegal surveillance of former employees, and inadequate policies that had failed to protect workers. More importantly, the settlement established legal precedent that would protect future employees from similar treatment. The external monitoring requirement would ensure that their promises weren't just empty words. As Foster's team prepared the final documents, I thought about Marcus and what he would have said about this moment. He'd always believed that standing up to bullies was the only way to stop them from hurting others. This settlement wasn't just about our family. It was about every future employee who wouldn't have to endure what I'd experienced. The baby moved, a gentle reminder that this victory belonged to the next generation as much as to me. Our child would inherit a world where pregnant women couldn't be discarded like inconvenient liabilities, where brilliant employees couldn't be stolen from with impunity. Meridian Tech had calculated that destroying me would be cost-free. Instead, that calculation had cost them everything: their reputation, their executives' freedom, and $7.5 million in damages. Sometimes, justice wasn't just sweet, it was profitable. The press conference announcing both the settlement and the launch of my new company took place on a crisp Monday morning in downtown Conference Center. Maria had suggested we control the narrative by making our own announcement rather than responding to media speculation. I stood at the podium, 7 months pregnant and wearing the same black dress I'd worn to Marcus's funeral. A deliberate choice that connected this moment to the journey that had brought me here. Behind me, a simple banner displayed the logo for Sentinel Security Solutions, the company that would ensure no other brilliant employee would be discarded like corporate waste. 6 months ago, I was a grieving widow who had just lost her husband. In a car accident, I began, my voice steady despite the cameras and microphones pointed in my direction. I returned to work 2 days after his funeral because my company told me grief leave wasn't company policy. The press release I prepared was comprehensive, that focused on the broader implications rather than personal grievances. It announced the $7.5 million settlement with Meridian Tech, the federal criminal convictions that had preceded it, and the launch of Sentinel Security Solutions with backing from 3 major venture capital firms. This case was never just about me, I continued. It was about establishing that companies cannot treat employees as disposable assets, cannot steal from the people who create value, and cannot hide behind corporate policies that prioritize profits over basic human decency. The questions from reporters were respectful but probing. How had I uncovered the criminal conspiracy? What message did this send to other tech companies? What would prevent similar situations in the future? The most important outcome isn't financial, I explained. It's the legal precedent we've established. Companies now know that discriminating against vulnerable employees, pregnant women, people dealing with family crises, employees with health issues, carries real consequences. Rebecca Chen, who had broken the original story, asked about the personal cost of the fight. This has been an incredibly difficult period for you personally. Do you feel the victory was worth what you've endured? I placed my hand on my stomach, feeling the baby move. My husband Marcus always believed I was capable of extraordinary things. This company, this fight for justice, this moment, they're all part of honoring his memory and building something worthy of our child's inheritance. The most powerful moment came when a reporter asked about my advice for other employees facing similar situations. Document everything. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. And remember that your intelligence and skills are your power. No one can take those away from you, no matter how they try to intimidate you. After the formal questions, Elena Vasquez joined me at the podium to announce Sentinel Security Solutions' first major contract, a 3-year, $15 million agreement with a Fortune 500 financial services company that had been impressed by the technology's demonstrated capabilities. Olivia's innovation represents the future of cybersecurity, Elena announced. Proactive threat prevention rather than reactive damage control. Her algorithm doesn't just protect data, it anticipates and prevents the attacks that cause data breaches. The press coverage that followed was overwhelmingly positive, but more importantly, it was accurate. Stories focused on the broader implications for employee rights, the criminal accountability that had been achieved, and the innovation that had emerged from adversity. Tom Rodriguez, who had taken a position as my head of security development, watched the coverage from our temporary office space. 6 months ago, Janet Morrison was calling you a liability, he observed. Today, you're featured on the front page of the Wall Street Journal as an example of entrepreneurial resilience. The contrast was stark and satisfying. While Meridian Tech's executives prepared for federal prison sentences, I was building a company that would employ dozens of people, protect countless businesses from cyber attacks, and establish new standards for how tech companies treat their workforce. The baby kicked during the evening news coverage. A strong movement that felt like celebration. Our child would be born into a world where their mother had proven that brilliance combined with determination could overcome any corporate bully, could turn betrayal into triumph, could transform grief into justice. But the most meaningful response came in an email from Linda Chan, the cancer survivor who had been forced out of Meridian Tech the year before. "Thank you for fighting when I couldn't," she wrote. "My daughter will grow up knowing that women like you refuse to be silenced." That evening, I sat in Marcus's office, surrounded by evidence of the journey from grieving widow to successful entrepreneur. His journal lay open to the page where he'd written about my potential to change the world. He'd been right, but not in the way either of us had imagined. I'd change the world not just through technological innovation, but by proving that justice was possible, that accountability could be achieved, that brilliant women couldn't be discarded without consequences. The press conference had been about more than announcing a settlement or launching a company. It had been about showing other employees that they didn't have to accept corporate cruelty as inevitable, that fighting back was possible, that victory could emerge from the darkest moments. Marcus would have been proud not just of the success, but of the principled way it had been achieved. We'd won without compromising our values, without silencing the truth, without accepting anything less than complete accountability. The world now knew what happened when companies underestimated grieving widows who happened to be brilliant engineers. The lesson was simple: don't. The final settlement documents were signed on a Thursday afternoon in the same conference room where this battle had begun months earlier. But the woman sitting across from Meridian Tech's representatives was no longer the broken, grieving employee they had tried to discard. Margaret Foster, still representing the company's insurance carriers, handed over the certified check with an expression that mixed defeat with grudging respect. $7.5 million more money than I'd ever imagined possessing, but more importantly, a complete vindication of everything I'd fought for. "The policy implementation begins immediately," Maria Rodriguez announced, reviewing the final terms. "External monitoring for 5 years, mandatory training on discrimination and employee rights, and public reporting on compliance metrics." The settlement agreement was 43 pages of detailed requirements that would fundamentally change how Meridian Tech operated if they survived long enough to implement them. Richard Hartley and Janet Morrison had already been sentenced to federal prison terms of 8 and 6 years, respectively. The company itself was being sold in bankruptcy proceedings to pay remaining creditors. "There's one more element," Foster announced, sliding an additional document across the table. "A personal letter from the board of directors." I read the letter with growing amazement. It was a formal apology, not the legal non-admission that corporate lawyers usually crafted, but an actual acknowledgement of wrongdoing. To Olivia Bennett, the board of directors of Meridian Technologies formally apologizes for the unconscionable treatment you received during your employment and after your husband's tragic death. Executives' actions violated not only legal requirements but basic human decency. Your courage in exposing systematic wrongdoing has protected countless current and future employees from similar treatment. The letter was signed by all 7 remaining board members, including 3 who had been appointed after the criminal indictments to oversee the company's dissolution. But the most satisfying moment came when Tom Rodriguez brought news from his contacts still inside the company. "They're naming the new employee assistance program after Marcus," he reported. "The Marcus Bennett Memorial Support Fund for employees dealing with family crises." I closed my eyes, feeling Marcus's presence in that moment. His death had been senseless, tragic, unfair, but from that tragedy had emerged something that would help other families facing similar crises. His memory would live on in support for people who needed compassion during their darkest moments. The check itself was almost anticlimactic, a piece of paper representing financial security for our child's future, but not nearly as important as the precedent we'd established. Employment lawyers across the country were already citing our case in similar lawsuits, using our victory to protect other vulnerable employees. Elena Vasquez had arranged for Sentinel Security Solutions to acquire some of Meridian Tech's remaining assets, including several patents and their client list. "Poetic justice," she observed. "The company that tried to steal your innovation is now contributing to your success." The financial projections for Sentinel were exceeding even our most optimistic estimates. 3 additional Fortune 500 companies had signed contracts after seeing the press coverage, and my algorithm's success rate in preventing cyber attacks had improved to 96% through continued development. But the most meaningful validation came in a call from Dr. Sarah Kim, my obstetrician, who had followed the case through media coverage. "Olivia, what you've accomplished while managing a high-risk pregnancy is extraordinary. You've shown that expecting mothers can be their strongest when others try to make them feel weakest." That evening, I hosted a small celebration dinner for the team that had made victory possible. Maria and her legal team, Tom and the early employees of Sentinel, Elena and her business guidance, even Rebecca Chen, who had ensured the truth reached the public. "To Marcus," Tom proposed, raising his glass, "for believing in Olivia before she believed in herself." "To Justice," Maria added, "for proving that even the most powerful companies aren't above the law." "To the future," Elena concluded, "for building something better from the wreckage they left behind." I touched my glass to theirs, feeling the baby move inside me, a strong kick that seemed to acknowledge the moment's significance. "To all the employees who won't have to endure what I did, because we refused to stay silent." The settlement documents lay on my desk at home that night, next to Marcus's journal and the first photographs of Sentinel's new office space. The journey from grief to triumph was documented in those papers, evidence that brilliant women couldn't be discarded, that justice was possible, that love could inspire victory even after loss. The final irony was perfect. Meridian Tech had paid for their own destruction. The $7.5 million they'd been forced to surrender was funding the company that would replace them in the market, building the success they'd been too blind to recognize when it worked in their own office. Richard Hartley and Janet Morrison were beginning federal prison sentences, their reputations destroyed, their careers ended. The company they'd tried to save through criminal behavior was being liquidated to pay for their crimes. But I was building something lasting, a company that valued innovation over politics, that treated employees as assets rather than liabilities. That proved the best revenge against corporate bullies was simple, overwhelming success. Justice hadn't just been served, it had been served with compound interest, and the returns would continue growing for years to come. Hope Bennett Marcus was born on a Tuesday morning in early spring, exactly 9 months after her father's death. She arrived 3 weeks early, but perfectly healthy, as if she understood that her mother had been waiting long enough for something purely joyful to celebrate. Held her in the hospital room, studying her tiny features for traces of Marcus. She had his dark hair and what looked like his determined chin, but her eyes were mine, alert, curious, already seeming to assess the world around her with keen intelligence. "She's beautiful," Elena whispered, visiting with flowers from the entire Sentinel team. Marcus would have been so proud. The birth certificate lay on the bedside table, officially documenting Hope's entrance into the world. Her full name, Hope Bennett Marcus, ensured that her father's memory would be part of her identity forever. Below that, in the space for mother's occupation, I'd written CEO, Sentinel Security Solutions. Dr. Kim had been right about the timing. Hope's early arrival coincided perfectly with Sentinel's official launch event, which Tom and Elena had managed flawlessly in my absence. The company I built from grief and determination now employed 15 people and had contracts worth over $50 million. The launch was incredible, Tom reported during his visit. 3 new Fortune 500 contracts signed, and the Department of Homeland Security wants to discuss federal implementation. You've built something extraordinary, Olivia.